When looking at a game world, there's one kind of faction I always love having around, and that is the mindless swarm. The unending mass of single-minded monsters that constantly throw themselves at you without thought of self-preservation. Where when you kill one, there are 10 ready to take its place. Like the Infested in Warframe, the Lost in XCOM 2, and the 10-year-olds in literally any online shooter ever. Do we have something like this in Final Fantasy XIV? Maybe in PvP, but not when referring to the lore. But, totally unrelated, we do have the Gnath, which is what we'll be looking at today. The Gnath, the highly territorial hunters of the smouldering wastes. A place so named due to the constant smoky haze that envelops it thanks to the Gnath's love of incense sticks. Incense sticks made from silverdew that releases a rather lovely odor. And by lovely, I mean that it smells like your dad's feet after he takes off his sweat-stained socks. The smell from this will burn your eyes and lungs, and is generally a really bad time.
And I assume the same happens with the incense sticks.
There's quite a number of fun little Gnath facts we can talk about, and we'll go over that all with our usual questions, starting with their physical characteristics. The Gnath, as I'm sure is blindingly obvious, are inspired by insects, both physically and, as we'll get to later, in their society. Physically, they have a thick exoskeleton that covers all their squishy bits and acts very much like a natural suit of armor, strong enough that some attacks will simply bounce off of them. The Gnaths have a dome-like head that houses their relatively large brains, and mandibles that act like little claws that cut up food and shove it down their mouths. These mandibles will often click against each other when the Gnath speaks, which is why they have the click-click whenever they talk to you. They also have these things, which I have no idea what they're supposed to be. And supposedly these guys also have eyes, but I honestly can't find them. The Gnath helmet we can wear shows that they may even have 4 pairs of eyes. But on the actual Gnath, I can't find their eyes, and I had quite a good look for them. The last interesting fact of Gnath physiology is that on their back sits an elytron. An elytron is the round carapace that covers the wings on beetles, implying that these guys have folded wings on their backs, which would be really amazing to see. The Gnath flying around and shooting their enemies from the sky, but they likely don't have wings, due to their reliance on their pets, namely the Kongamato, a vile king that the Gnath have domesticated and use as flying mounts to get around.
Now next we'd normally talk about their religion, but I'm gonna shake things up and talk about their culture and society.
As mentioned, the Gnath are inspired by insects, but not just any insects. Eusocial insects. Ants and termites mostly. These insects have a phenomenon where their individual selves aren't that important, but what's important is how they work together for the betterment of the hive. The Gnath are like this. However, these inspiration insects all work together without a ruler, doing what the majority feels is best for the hive. And this is also where the Gnath differ from their inspiration. The Gnath have a single figure that rules and controls every single one of them, and I mean this in the most absolute way possible. This single individual is called the Overmind, and it controls a link that all Naph have, for they are bound
by the
one mind,
the sacred union of our every thought and emotion.
By the way, that wasn't a joke. They are psychically bonded together. This one mind is entirely controlled by the Overmind.
There is zero individuality in the system. So honestly, a good way to view the Naph is as a single entity distributed across thousands of bodies. They even view themselves like this, with each Naph not being treated as an individual, but as an appendage to do a very specialized task for the greater body. However, the Naph can be individuals. They can have their own thoughts and feelings. The problem is the one mind connection drowns these thoughts out and keep them being mindless slaves. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if we just kill this Overmind individual? Surely that'll free all of them. Well, that has been done, and it has proven that it is also impossible. This Overmind is not a physical entity. If you kill its current body that it lives in, it'll just pop into another. It exists in the one mind psychic connection between all Naph. Think of him as kind of being saved on the cloud. Interestingly, this also kind of applies to all Naph. Since all their memories and thoughts are kept in the one mind, all their experiences are known to all others. So physically, they may be killed, but their thoughts could be adopted in their entirety by a newborn Naph. A new vessel? So are they alive again? Who would have thought the Naph would have us contemplating what it means to be alive? Don't worry though, most of the time when a Naph dies or is killed, their thoughts and memories aren't adopted. It merely sits in the one mind and slowly over time fade and is forgotten. Now, with all this said, I've only described the Naph, the beast tribe that lives in Loth-Ast-Naf. We also have to talk about the Vath, the beast tribe that lives in Loth-Ast-Vath. These guys are nothing like what I just described, because their connection to the one mind is either so weak it practically doesn't exist, or the Vath in question has such a strong will they are able to resist its control, with the link slowly fading over time. Thus, the Vath have individuality, which creates something entirely different. But first, how did the Vath come to exist? At first, there was only Naph, but Vath would appear in the society now and again when one of them loses their connection to the one mind. These guys were simply discarded when they popped up, seeing as nothing more than a strange quirk and left to die in the wilds. However, eventually one survived, the Vath storyteller. It was he who created Loth-Ast-Vath, and here he started what he and the other Vath now call the non-mind. Every time a Vath was discarded, he would go out and collect them, help them become an individual, find a purpose, and become a family. Thus, Loth-Ast-Vath slowly grew over time. However, this didn't go unnoticed for too long. But you see, the one mind connection we talked about, regardless of how weak it becomes, is still there. And it is felt both ways. The Overmind eventually felt, and now every day feels the disconnection of the Vath. And thus this disconnection is felt by all the other Naph,
which then creates more Vath. And with more Vath, that disconnection feeling becomes stronger, thus creating more Vath. And you can kind of see how this is sort of a snowball effect. Their very existence is a threat to the One Mind, as they are the only thing that can actually completely kill the Overmind by allowing all the Gnath to lose their connection to the One Mind, turning them all into Vath. And that is also why they're at war, and why the Gnath now kill any who they suspect lose connection to the One Mind. But what is Vath culture? Well, there really isn't one. Their culture can simply be summed up by saying, be an individual. To them, individuality is everything, though some Vath do struggle with this. They're like a subreddit. They're so used to living in an echo chamber that the idea of a dissenting opinion scares and confuses them at times. But this is one of the most important things about the Vath, their ability to disagree, the ability to argue. They have this freedom to be individuals and have their own thoughts and opinions. This is what it means to be Vath. Now let's move on and talk about their diet. The Gnath and Vath are omnivores, though they do prefer to eat meat when they can. The Gnath really only eat one thing, a paste they make from meat they get from hunting, mixed with various kinds of fungi. This paste is highly nutritious, but also really disgusting, even to the Gnath and Vath, which will shock you when you learn about what the things the Vath like to eat. This paste, though, is the literal only thing the Gnath get to eat for their entire lives. Except for the Gnath warriors. They sometimes get the privilege of eating meat too, because they do not waste what they kill. Now for the Vath. Well, they will try anything, and their diet is highly dependent on the individual. They all like different flavors, so there's no universal diet for them. However, they have shown a fondness of rather interesting stuff. For example, some Vath like the taste of nunka eggs and nunka meat, which is considered really tough, has an unpleasant odor, and only fit for consumption if you're about to starve to death. Some love algae, which is like chocolate to them. Some even tried to eat a tree because experimentation. So even though they all try and enjoy different foods, they appear to tend to enjoy stuff we really wouldn't. And if you still don't believe me, there are some Vath who really like the taste of black loam, which I'll let the item description speak for itself. Time to move on, their god and religion. Now, here's where we hit a little bit of a snag. The god of the Gnath is Ravana, the wrath and savior of the colony. However, the Vath do not believe in him, at least not in the same sense, since, again, the Vath are all about being individuals. Each and every one of them has a different idea of what Ravana is, if they even choose to believe in him. And talking to the Gnath to learn about their belief is really difficult, because shockingly, the very hostile Gnath don't exactly want to spend time to talk to us about their lord and savior. So we know near nothing about him. We know nothing about the Gnath's origin myth for Ravana, or if he even has one. But what we can do is talk about what Ravana means to the Gnath through what his primal incarnation looks and acts like. A primal is the physical manifestation of the shared ideas of what the summoner's god, or whatever they're summoning, would be like. And since the Gnath all think the same way, Ravana is the ideal being to all Gnath. He is the god of war and battle. He exalts in strength and abhors weakness. His nub gets a chub whenever he is in glorious combat. He is able to fly swiftly and quickly with his wings, and cut down dragons with ease from the skies. Basically, he's a winged bug version of Estinian. But beyond that, we really do know nothing about him. And there's a chance we may never know anything about him because the Gnath just aren't friendly. So let's not dwell on this and move on to their naming conventions. Now the Gnath and Vath names are very different. So let's start with the Gnath. Gnath names don't exist, which shouldn't be a surprise since names are an individual thing, and there are no individuals here, so no names. However, equally as unsurprising, Vath names do exist, and are considered very important to them. Names are usually taken by a Vath to signify a very important change in their path to being an individual, marking them as something unique and becoming very much a part of who they are. Remember, they were mindless slaves before, and now having a name, something unequivocally they can call their own, is quite a powerful thing. But there's still no naming convention here. They take a name of anything they like the sound of. Some of them take on names by mimicking the naming conventions of other races. One Gnath taking on an Ellison name, Sibleroit. Some Vath take on names they have feelings of, like the Hungerer, but it seems like the majority of Vath name themselves after their profession, like the Vath Historian, Vath Stick Peddler, and Vath Artisan. Yes, these are their names. And yeah, that's also all there is to their naming. Short and very simple for the Gnath and Vath. I hope you enjoyed. Next, we'll be looking at a diminutive people who live across all of Eorzea. A tiny race that is barely noticed and scurries around in the background, but one that actually does have a decent amount of lore and history, but still quite a lot less than other races so that I can maybe squeeze it out before Endwalker. Next, we'll be looking at the Qiqirn. But for now, goodbye my friends, and have a great day.